Yate shidne kia ani nishle do bilagana bashin deschini deshe do bilagana deshinale she amber kinas bakradi and she tol hot soy then sha. I'm a Navajo Nation Council delegate here at the beautiful foothills of the Tushkai Mountain. I represent 7 beautiful communities: Sheep Springs, Two Great Hills, Tolina, Sonosti, Red Valley, Cove, Gadiai, and Biclabato. But we represent all of our beautiful Navajo people within the 4 sacred mountains, our families and children who are working and getting their education in the urban areas, and also our military families who are serving abroad. And so with that in mind, is when I put my prayer down this morning, that's who that positive energy went out to: all of those relatives and all of our in-laws and all of our relatives of the five-fingered. I've been asked a few times since the vote yesterday on council how I felt. And I was put in an interesting position because when we speak at council and we start using the I comments, then we're talking as the individual, the person, the soul inside of us. Now, when we say the people, then that requires that we make an effort to go out and to talk with, engage, and be able to identify who we are speaking on behalf. And so with this amendment to the ARPA legislation that was proposed by the president, we did have a Northern Agency resolution passed by all of the Northern Agency chapters to provide equity and to provide an opportunity for community-based projects that would help with the ARPA relief to provide that direct services to their communities. So that's what we took, and we made it very transparent. We sent out chapter resolutions, we sent out information, and most importantly, we were able to identify what projects were being proposed on our behalf, on behalf of the districts. And what we found were very system-based projects, is what we're calling them. They would enhance the system, but it neglected and it did not include, for example, direct electricity to homes. And that's a problem, because from the chapter projects, and if you're a community member now, or you have community members back home, or you're wondering when is your mom and your dad going to get electricity, this legislation did not provide as much opportunity that we need for the nation. Now, when I say that, I also want to say there was a part of the original legislation that gave NTUA, our Navajo Utility Authority, $75 million for projects to be determined. Now, I can't recall a time where council or the Navajo Nation provided a pool of money for any entity to select projects on their own. And so our attempt was to hear and make sure that family has reached out. I received a letter from IHS doctor requesting that this community member get electricity. Does this proposal cover them? And that has been the challenge since last October, is understanding what's in this proposal and how will it provide that direct relief. And so I could see now, and I always have to believe that everything's a lesson. And in this conversation, I could see and I heard the fear from the technical team and from the president's office when you allow chapters and community members to submit their proposals for consideration. And why I say fear is because back in July, chapters did that on your behalf. Was it perfect? No. Do they need support? Yes. But since July, we've been waiting to see, okay, what projects are considered eligible. And what we found out, when I say we, delegates who were reading and looking through this binder and asking questions at leadership meetings for this information, what projects were submitted, what projects were considered eligible. And what we found is more than 75%, I want to say as high as 90% of those chapter projects were not submitted to Department of Justice on behalf of the chapters to be determined if they're eligible. And that's a problem. That's a critical problem because the Nez-Lizer administration requested just about $180 million to build up their central offices to address how the nation will process these ARPA projects, the type of technical assistance they'll provide, and it's codified. So when you read resolutions, when you read Budget and Finance Committee resolutions, you can see that policy is in place. And that was the same policies that were in place that the council was directing for those programs to provide that technical assistance to our chapters and to community members who are engaged. Because when we host these calls, not only is it chapter officials, it's your CLUPC, it's your road committees, it's concerned community members, it's senior center advocates. And so I think in looking at all of the energy that was put in place to provide that misinformation, the challenge now is use that same energy. And I'm speaking to the ARPA technical team that is receiving the people's money to implement ARPA. Use that same energy to go out and to provide that information to chapters and to follow up with the chapters and make sure that they have submitted and know how to write out that expenditure plan. Go back and do not delay, because our community members are expecting that electricity, they're expecting our housing needs to be met, and reviewing that document, it's a large document. We could pull out pieces on what didn't work. And another aspect that didn't work for our district and for our agency is how the veterans housing was proposed. The veterans have their list by chapter resolution on homes that have been requested. What we're now asking for is, what were those assessments? What was the follow-up? And we're not provided that information. First, because it probably doesn't exist, because nobody's following up. Or second, they'll say this is confidential information. But there's a public document, the chapter resolution, that supports these veterans' homes. The chapters and the council delegate should be given a courtesy update in terms of where we're at with the assessment and how we can move forward. And so in reading the president's plan, there was still a lot of assessment time built in. That's where you get the to be determined. They need to make sure they have their home site lease, their right-of-way, which are all internal Navajo Nation processes. Something that the administration can fix, something we've heard about a one-stop shop the last 24 months. But we still have community members who cannot receive support or receive electricity or water because they don't have a home site lease. But they've lived there and they have a structure and they have children there. And so we need that accountability. So I think that's why I see this as a lesson learned. I see this as an opportunity to continue to pull that technical support back to the community level, back to those who are engaged and want to keep their government accountable and keep delegates accountable. I can say from July to October, I was under the impression that these projects were being reviewed. It was not until we started breaking down the projects, which has taken many months, many corrections, many follow-up meetings, to understand what's in the list and to understand who's creating that list, because that's very important. If you're living in a semi-populated area and you're in a house with water, electricity, your priorities could be different. So how are we prioritizing these projects? And what efforts are we taking to provide support so our community members can get the services that they need? And so I just think there's more opportunity and more areas for collaboration. I'm getting ready for our housing justice meeting. We meet bi-monthly, and it is so important for communities to get the information that they need on why it's so challenging to get a house on Navajo Nation. Whether if you need support, and there's federal support, there's 638 money that Navajo Nation receives to help individuals. There's a home loan program in the Office of the Controller. Why is it so difficult to not only obtain a home site lease and to build a home on our homelands? And so we have a great group of individuals, and I hope we could have that follow-up discussion about what are the housing needs, emergency housing, transitional housing, student, college dorm housing. We know that our students right now are paying anywhere up to $1,000 a month just to attend school. And that actually was an interesting point that I want to talk more about. So I just wanted to give you some insight where I'm at, and I'm just grateful that this wind has come across our region and is just blowing away those negative or those stubborn energy, and just move it along so that when it calms down and folks' emotions calm down, that we can then re-engage in what we foresee as an elected official, working with our communities, working with community-based leadership, working with those who have suffered generations, and develop a plan that restores the dignity of our people. No one should be living in the conditions that our relatives are living in. So my hope is connect with your relatives back home. Do a check-in, a mental check-in, see if they're okay. They may need some help, and they may be embarrassed to talk about it. And if they need services, be their advocate, because what our Navajo Nation system can do is make it very challenging. And it's so sad to say that. It's so sad to have to say at this age in spring of 2022, our government is still set up in a way that doesn't provide the services that our Navajo people need. So let's continue to engage. I appreciate your time. And I'm learning new platforms. I have some young Navajos helping me because I cannot see my comments on Facebook. But my hope is that we get on the radio to share this information with our elders, that we continue to talk about it and provide solutions. And I think we just need to be aware. We just need to understand that Window Rock will never have the answers that we need to help us back home. So make sure you tell your children you love them. Make sure that you take care of yourself, and know that you have to love yourself first. So be well. We'll talk soon. Hagone.